Today is Monday, June 15th, 2020, and this is the 7 p.m. Charter Commission meeting. All members, with the exception of Carrie Snyder, are in attendance, and Denise Luciano will be joining us shortly. We are also joined at the moment by Town Council Lauren Goldberg and Norton Media Center. We have no guests as of this point in time. Okay, so we are called to order. I'm going to admit I have not even looked at I haven't even looked at the minutes. I forgot all about them. Do we want to pull them up real quick, or do we want to defer to the next meeting? Sandy, what's your preference?
Doesn't matter, whatever you guys want.
If everybody's okay, let's,
I'm good. I'm good.
All right, fine.
I'm good.
Somebody make a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes. Back to the last meeting.
Those are Monday, June 1st.
June 1st, yeah. Monday, June 1st.
I will second that.
Mm-hmm.
All in favor? David, yes?
Aye.
Janie? Sandy?
Yes.
Me? Okay, minutes are accepted of June 1st. Okay, hey, there's Denise. Denise joined at 7:08 p.m. Administrative items, I don't think we have any. Sandy has offered to look into the cost and timeline for printing the draft charter, which needs to go into the Sun Chronicle as an insert. I'm assuming, Sandy, you have not heard back yet?
Just actually, I think you just emailed me.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so.
Okay. All right, we can talk about it next week, but that is in the works. And I don't think we have any other administrative items yet. If we do, we can bounce back. I still don't see any members of the public, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment for the evening. And let's talk about how excited we are to have a draft charter. I geeked out a little bit. I was very, very excited. I was also very thrilled to see the, I wasn't quite sure in what form it was going to come or how complete it was going to be, so I was really pleasantly surprised to see that it was an almost complete draft charter. So I was very excited reading it. So, but yes.
My husband is actually gonna call up to call to be let into the meeting. Then I'm gonna be able to use his computer and I'll be able to look at the charter at the same time. So when you see that number, or you see another person, that's David.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Given that, let's talk about logistics. Do you want to, David Goldberg, I am admitting him. Would you like to, I can give the screen over to you and you can walk us through. Do you want to keep track of the items that we're discussing tonight? You're on mute.
I did see that right as I started talking. I'm happy to do whatever you guys would like. And I know we had just briefly exchanged comments about version control. That's the only thing I care about, is that we're always working from the latest version. Mm-hmm. So if you did a red line and you have, that stuff, then I think let's just use yours. And then after tonight, we'll have a new version with anything that we dealt with tonight.
Okay. I should caveat that I do not have a red line.
Okay.
I made a list and I actually emailed it to you and said, if you want a red line, I'm happy to send it to you.
Okay. I can do either. Whatever it is that you guys would like best. I'm happy to keep track. I would anyway. Okay. So, it seems like it makes good sense.
I think I would personally prefer it, trying to, I I think you'll understand your own shorthand better than me, and then people don't have to wait for me to type and talk at the same time.
All right, I'm gonna leave this one.
But you wanted to use this together.
I think now I do want to use that. But now there's no video.
Hit start video.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
And your volume.
That's okay.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Go there. No. You're good.
We can hear you.
Okay, and I can hear you.
Excellent.
It's this little thing of volume, whatever. All right. Sorry about that.
No worries at all.
Okay.
Gotta love
So
the technology.
I'm gonna go over here to the document which I have open. All right, great. So, Laura, if you want to share the screen, that's fine. I was thinking maybe we just start at the beginning, and
Okay.
anybody, I can talk about what, why I did what I did, and answer any questions. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, how do I grant you?
No, you can just do it, and I can, because my screen is on a different computer.
Got it. All right. Hang on one second. So I want to make sure, if it's okay with the group, Carrie since she wasn't going to be here and she did have some comments, I'm going to share her version so everybody can see what her comments were.
It's a great idea.
Okay. And hang on, I'm going to put you guys up to maybe.
And I'm just going to turn off my video here so no one has to see me squinting like super close to the computer here. So while we go through this, I'm going to turn that off.
All right, I can make it larger.
I wish I had no idea what you were talking about, Jane, but it's you.
Yeah. No, you don't have to do that. I can squint and I can get close, but I just don't need you. You don't need to see my face as I do it.
I actually have to take my glasses off to see my computer. That's how weird my eyes are now. All right, so I can see the majority of you. And, okay. So, I am going to breeze through unless either Carrie has made a comment or there's something that we need to address by Lauren. Otherwise,
There we are.
if there's something we did not see that you want addressed, just tell me to stop and we can go back. Okay.
So 2-3.
Yes, please.
Okay. So in 2-3, we talk about choosing the president annually. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's what was intended. Essentially, that would mean that the president would have a 1-year term and the president would not be allowed to be ousted during that 1 year. Now, you can see that there's policy arguments on both sides of that. On the one hand, that may be a good thing because it means that that person can't really be buffeted by politics. They're much more secure in their position. On the other hand, if they're doing a terrible job, then there's really no way of getting rid of them for that time period. So it's not, there's no one best answer here. I did do it annually. That seemed like kind of the right choice. 1 year, that's their term, and that's what they got. So that's something, if you guys want to change it, we would change it to shall be chosen annually by and we'd say somewhere else that the council could be reorganized by an X percentage vote of the council.
Does anybody have an opinion on the current version of the language versus what was just proposed by Lauren?
Being the addition of the council could be reorganized with a X percentage vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
That part, yeah. No, I understand, yeah.
Do you have a preference?
Oh, it probably makes sense to have the language in to allow for the reorganization. Not that I think we would need that often, because a year goes by pretty quick. But it could be good to have in case someone takes the role of president and they realize that they don't really have the time to commit to doing it. Right?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, if someone withdraws or resigns from the position, you can definitely reorganize then. What this really would be, and Denise, to kind of put it bluntly, it would be like, let's say that there was a council and the council president was acting badly. I don't know what that means. They're being unreasonable, completely unreasonable. They're not letting councilors put stuff onto the agenda that they want to, et cetera, et cetera. That would be the type of behavior that might cause a reorganization over the will of the chair or the will of the president, versus the president just deciding. If the president decides at any time they want to step down, there's a way to fill that position.
Keith, you have an opinion?
I agree with it.
Okay, I'm inclined to provide the town council with as many options as are available to them. Does anybody disagree with the proposal to change this? Okay. Seeing none, hearing none, I'm going to move.
Hey,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was on mute and talking for a while. So I guess what would we be thinking the percentage, the vote needed to oust this person would be? I assume it would be greater than a majority.
Yeah, and I mean that's a policy question for you guys about what you think. But in my view, if you want to have a council president that can kind of stand up to other people not being pleased with them, you want to make sure that it's not easy to get rid of them as president.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 2/3. Well, there's only 6 left, so 2/3 would be 4. So it'd be 2/3 of the remaining.
But that's just a majority of the council as a whole. So I guess I was trying to say while I was on mute that the way I look at this with both the powers that are vested in the council president being fairly limited, and Lauren made the point much more eloquently than I would have about being able to do having the ability to do the unpopular thing, even if it's the right thing to do, and it only being a year. To me, it would need to be at least 5 votes out of the 7 to get the person out, or I would prefer to not have the language in there and let if they're being that bad, then they can be recalled in other areas. But if they're just unpopular, they need to be really unpopular for this to be a thing, in my opinion.
Lauren, on this matter, does the town council president vote?
If they're paid, then the answer is no. This is hard because I think what you kind of have to, we always say you're not planning based on particular people or particular personalities. You have to kind of take that step back. And there's a competition between or a tension between being able to stand up to the group and to the voters and say, no, I'm the president, this is my job, this is what I'm going to do, versus being able to be knowing that if there's too many factions, you immediately could be replaced. So I don't know. It seems like if the council itself is voting on who the president is, that then to change that, there would be a higher quantum of vote, something like 5 out of 7. 4 out of 7 is just a majority, so that's not a high quantum. And again, I think it's not something that the council would want to do lightly. It would kind of destabilize the council's proceedings and its operations for sure. So you'd want it to be a kind of last resort. You probably see things work out politically more, that people of general respect in the community would be able to talk to the individual and try to talk them down basically before you see the council reorganize.
Yeah, if it were the 6 remaining members voting, I would think 4 of the 6 might be sufficient, but if we're including the president, who we don't know, they wouldn't be inclined to vote.
Right, so whether or not they're included in the vote, they're going to vote against their own removal, right? So it almost doesn't matter if we're saying that person's allowed to vote or not, which still leaves us that if it's only 4 votes, that is a simple majority of the 7-member body.
Well, if I may, I think there's going to be a ton of decisions just like this. I wonder if we should go through them and then give people a little bit to think about it and then come back. Madam Chair, what do you think?
Sure.
Because in some ways I'm thinking, like, reading it all together and having kind of that overall picture and then thinking about whether the checks and balances are right. And I'll put a note that just says that interest in providing for reorganization with a higher quantum of vote, and we'll come back to the quantum. Make sense?
I think that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
All right, so I'm just going to add that here.
Well, I was just curious, this is Dave, I was muted earlier by mistake, but I don't recall seeing that kind of language any other charter.
So reorganization is something that is can be a huge issue. So, you know, we've seen other councils where they really want to reorganize and others where they really don't want to. And if it just says chosen annually, there's no choice, so you wouldn't see anything about reorganization. Essentially, if a term is provided in law, then that, unless there's a way to cut short the term also provided in law, you cannot make a change. So I don't think, 4 out of 6 sounds like a lot more than 4 out of 7, but I do think that that's just a majority. So can you get 4 counselors to agree with anything? Probably. You know, you probably have a good working group. You really want to make sure that it's not too easy or too hard. So, you know, saying 5 out of 7 doesn't sound terrible, but I think that's the kind of thing as a policy matter that you can look at with all of it and fit it in, decide.
Okay.
All right, so we'll come back, and I'm numbering the things we have to come back to.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next one. Yeah, so I don't know about you guys, but I find that when I'm looking at the number of times the town council has to meet and the number of responsibilities it has with committee memberships, that there's just a lot of meetings. And so trying to provide for a meeting with the full school committee 2 times a year, that to me is a lot. And not that 2 meetings a year are a bad thing, or, you know, in kind of in the general sense, a lot of meetings, but add that to, you know, a weekly committee meeting and a weekly council meeting, and next thing you know, you're just in meetings and meetings. The other thing is that the school committee, remember that their function is essentially to decide on budgets and provide guidance to the superintendent. And so the superintendent is really going to be the one with the underlying information. So that's why I put or its designee there, so that there wouldn't have to be a fight about it if the school committee decided it made more sense to send the superintendent.
That seems very reasonable. Anybody have a differing opinion?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. So I'm going to delete the comments that I made when we had something that there's general agreement about.
Great.
Okay. So the next thing is kind of the bigger picture about how do we deal with filling these vacancies. So the vice president, chosen annually as well, acting as president during absence or disability, and assistant president as may be requested from time to time. The filling, so that's how we get a council vice president. So if the president was just absent or was on a trip or was sick a couple meetings, the president would still be the president and the vice president would just step in. But if there's a vacancy in the office of the council president, it would get filled by the council vice president. So when you vote for president and vice president on the council, you're basically saying, I'm happy with the person who's going to be the president for a year. And if that person, for any reason, was to leave or, God forbid, be ill or die or any of these things, then the vice president, the council vice president, would take over. And then the next one, the next layer down from that would be that if the office of vice president is vacant, then you fill it by the council until the next regular election, at least 64 days later. So the idea would be you have the president and the vice president, so you know who the would be the new president if the president was unable to function. And then the council would choose who should be the council vice president if the vice president is elevated. And then that position would go on to the, that not council vice president, but the position, the vacant position would go on the ballot the next regular election. And that...
Well, we were talking about, here's where I'm confused. You keep referring to it as a ballot, and we are not specifically voting on the ballot for council vice president.
Exactly. So it's really the filling of any, hold on, maybe we don't.
I just want to make sure we're being clear that the town council is voting for the office of the...
Yes, absolutely. But
okay.
At the next election, you're going to have a reorganization.
Yes.
And so the person that was chosen by the council to serve as the council vice president would serve only until that next election.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's there for.
Okay.
I mean, I can add the language if you think it would be useful, at which time the council shall reorganize. Maybe that would help make that clearer.
Lauren, quick question. What is the 64 days for? If it's under 64 days, does it just wait and not get filled?
Yeah, because under state law, you can't fill a vacancy that occurs in fewer than 64 days. And so if it's less than 64 days, if it's less than 64 days, you can't put a vacancy on the ballot in general. So there would be no way to add that additional position.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Does anybody have a opinion about this matter?
Do you want to talk about section 2.4 as well? Because that's like the whole ball of wax. So
yeah.
Any vacancy occurring with more than 6 months remaining, the way that I drafted this, they would be elected by the town council to fill the vacancy. So a person elected by the council would fill it only until the next election, basically is what that's saying, occurring at least 64 days after the vacancy, because that's as soon as we could get the office on the ballot. Anybody who is appointed essentially by the council would not be a candidate for re-election at the election if they chose to run. And the council could, if it wanted to, call for a special election. So essentially trying to minimize the need for that, but allow it in case it felt very important. Now, I can tell you that by allowing it, you know, and I know, Madam Chair, that you had said in some ways you want to preserve as much opportunity as possible for the council, but as you might imagine, it can be a very political issue, whether to call for a special election to fill a vacancy. So if you don't have that in there, you know the position can't be vacant for longer than 1 year, and that you would be filling it with a registered voter of the town for that time period. So I think it's definitely another one of those policy kind of crossroads where you have to try and decide, do we want the council to be put in the spot of having to consider calling a special election, or do we want to say the council itself can fill this spot for the remainder of that year until the election can take place?
Can we walk through a hypothetical?
There's nothing I like more than hypotheticals.
Okay. We have somebody who steps down in May, immediately following the election.
Mhm.
I am reading this, and perhaps I'm interpreting it incorrectly. Can the town council decide to do nothing?
My dog would like to play if anyone's interested. I am not whimpering.
Excellent.
Can the town council do nothing?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
They have the option to appoint somebody
Mhm.
from the registered voters and serve until the next election.
Yes.
They have the option to call a special town election.
Yes.
Do they have the option to do nothing?
I mean, that's an option that we can provide, that the position would stay vacant. But if you think about that for a whole year, and your council has 7 people, so for a whole year there'd be 6. And so for the entire year there'd be a potential for 3-3 ties. And any person who, is upset about that, could in theory try to go to court to force an election or to force the council, or file a citizen's petition or any of those things. So the shall here is likely directory rather than mandatory. Words that most charter readers get really angry about, because you see these things and it looks like a direction to, it looks like it's a must. So I said a vacancy occurring in the office of a town council with more than 6 months remaining. If it's fewer than 6 months left in their term, it would not have to be filled and it would be left open.
Right.
Again, because it's a shorter period of time. But those are policy decisions for you guys. Does that make sense? Do you like the idea of that? When you think about how long 6 months is, it is a long time. But a special election, as you know, would take at least 64 days plus the council's vote. So that's already like 2.5, 3 months. And then if there was a vacancy with less than 6 months, they could fill it, but they wouldn't have to.
Okay.
And we can clarify that if you would like.
Nope, that's fine. I'm trying to figure out what in this language compels them to have to make a decision then. I know we're giving them the options, but how do we write it so that they either have to do the appointing themselves or put it to special election?
Is that what you're looking for to be the option? Either make an appointment or call a special election?
Personally, yes. I'm not speaking for the group.
So the way that I drafted this is that if there's more than 6 months remaining, then they can fill the vacancy on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But that last sentence says, yeah, but at any time instead, they can call for a special election. So as long as there's more than 64 days.
The way I'm viewing that is town council cannot make a decision. They've got, they're 3 to 4 and nobody wants any hard feelings and they decide to put it to the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
they have that option.
right?
Okay.
Or it's like literally the day after the election, and they say, well, it's a whole year, and we have to do a Proposition 2.5 thing anyway, or we would be, we're interested in doing a non-binding ballot question, or whatever it might be.
They can put it there.
They could. The difficulty comes with a council in that everything is very political. And so if you leave the choices, which we did, I mean, again, someone could try to file a mandamus action to force the council, but it's typically courts unlikely to say you have to choose someone. They're certainly not going to say you have to choose Joe or you have to choose Sally. They don't care about that. This allows them to call for the special election. But in theory, the fact that there's a choice means they go to the meeting, they fight about it in as polite a tone as possible, of course. There's disagreement, you put it off for a week, you put it off for another week. I mean, it can lead to, kind of political decisions. But then again, they're an elected body and they have to live with that.
Mm-hmm. I think
So,
we had. Sorry, go ahead. I don't know.
So this is Janie. So Lauren, is what I'm hearing you say, like the options are almost more problematic than just giving a choice, like than just saying, okay, do A or do B, right? Fill it or not fill it. Or when you fill it yourselves, appoint someone, or hold a special election.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that can turn into, like, should we call for a special election or should we appoint someone, can turn into a big deal. But on the other hand, this way preserves the options, and if there's a do nothing choice, there's nothing here that prevents that. Even though we see shall be filled, it doesn't really enforce itself. So someone would have to go to court, they'd have to bring a mandamus action, and the council could just say, well, we can't agree. Like we have 3 on one side, 3 on the other, no agreement. So they're not going to force the council to do something it can't do.
If I recall, and this is going back really far, all the way to January probably, I think we had decided on this as a compromise of sorts, because if I recall correctly, and somebody please step in if I'm not remembering it, we were unable to kind of come to a decision amongst ourselves as to which was the more appropriate method for filling, whether the town council were to appoint them or to just make it a special election. I think right now the current charter requires the Board of Selectmen to call for a special election. Is that correct?
Let me be clear about why. So under state law, the Board of Selectmen is not allowed to request, it's not allowed to fill a vacancy in its own office. So it either has to be a special election or it stays vacant. Okay. And under state law, 200 voters can force the Board of Selectmen to call for a special election. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how that works. So there's no opportunity for them to fill a vacancy through an appointment. Typically, in my experience, it's obviously the position of town councilor carries with it a lot of responsibility, so it's not an easy thing to decide. If this just said a vacancy occurring shall be filled, right, then that would be the choice. If you have it, but you can call a special election, well, now we're kind of in between. Is it an appointment? Is it a special election? There's no right answer, and there's probably no way to do it in a manner that reduces the drama of such a decision. If you don't include the language about the special election, however, you need to go to the general court to get a special act to allow you to fill it that way. So those are it's food for thought anyway.
Can I ask a question that if we provide the option between the two, does that render the terminology shall as to be more directory versus mandatorily?
It's the shall I mean, the problem is, and especially in a situation like this, you can think about a split board, a split council, where they're talking about who could take that 7th position, and they might never choose somebody that everybody agrees on, and so that's why that shall doesn't do what you would kind of think it's supposed to do. It's saying you shall fill it, but if that filled, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So cute that come here, come and show off. Here, but then you'll at least know who's barking. See, isn't she
Aww.
cute? Yeah. Hi. She tries to like bite me.
She's adorable.
Doggy's always
over
welcome.
there. You know what she's doing? She's eating the plastic Crocs because that's how she tells us she would like to play. So the family Crocs. So that's what she's off doing. All right. Anyway, that's still going to be directory rather than mandatory, and there's no way to fix that except if you said that somebody else gets to appoint after X number of days. So you need a repercussion to make it mandatory.
How often is that used?
Feeling a repercussion like that?
Yes.
Never. I've never seen it.
Okay.
I mean, if you had a mayor, it could maybe default to the mayor, but you don't. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it would be strange. I mean, I guess you could say if they haven't filled it after a month, then the president could fill it. But again, I just that's making that that's giving the council president a serious responsibility. I haven't seen that, and mostly the counselors, a lot of the councils go for 2 years, so it's 2 years in, 2 years out, and so for them, if there's a vacancy, they deal with it in the first 18 months, and then after that. So if it's in the first 18 months, they'll fill it. They'll hold a special election. If it's in the last 6, they'll just have an appointment to last till the next election. But yours are the terms, it's the 3-year term, but a yearly election. So you can remedy any vacancy every year. Right. And that's also why I think probably a special election would be less preferable, just from a monetary standpoint. You're already doing an election every year. So if you had to do this, it would be another one. So it would be a special, so you'd incur the cost of holding a special.
All right.
Laura, can I pipe in?
Yes, please.
I think we had a long conversation about this, so I hesitate to really change what we already stated, because this was, we listed the pros and cons of all the different options, and this was sort of the compromise I think we all were comfortable with. I think if we start to change it, then we're going to get into the same debates that we got into, and same pros and cons that we got into back in February or January, whenever it was that we discussed this. So this seems to be, exactly what we agreed to leave it at then.
Yeah, I'm inclined as well. The only thing I'm concerned about is it gives them the option to do nothing.
And I think we had said that was okay too, because if it's 7 months, then they maybe decide they don't want to fill it.
Right. No, well, that I get, but I'm thinking May and they can't make a decision, and
right.
They don't call for a special town meeting, and then what happens? I
know we talked through the whole thing of, could it stay empty, and we kind of went through all the different scenarios, and I think if we start changing it now, we're going to go back into the same debates and discussions that we already had.
I agree. I'm just cognizant of dysfunction. And are we setting it up for dysfunction? That's all. Those are my concerns.
Can I come back in 2 minutes? Can you give me 2 minutes?
Sure.
All right, thank you. I know you'll be able to talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
All right. Is everybody else in agreement with Sandy that we're happy with the way we have drafted it?
I'm good with it.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Where's Kevin?
Sorry, I'm good with us on mute.
Okay, no, that's okay. I can't see. I've got a bar going across the top, and I can only see 4 of you. So
I'm good with it as well.
if somebody drops, I may not notice. So just somebody pay attention. Janie, how about you?
For the number of times I think it would be an issue, I'm fine with it too. I'm a little hesitant with the nothing option being available. I'd hate to see something not filled, whether appointed or elected, but for the number of times that I think that this is going to be an overall issue, I'm fine with it.
Okay. Did I hit everybody? Sorry, I'm trying to go down the list. Denise, we hit.
You didn't hit me, but I'm good with it.
David,
This is audio
sorry.
only, Dave. Yep.
Okay. All right. I will go along. I'm not going to push this any further. Let's talk. All right. So based on this, do we want to go back to the vice council, the vice president, the council vice president discussion, or do you want to move forward? Not everybody at once.
Yeah, I think we should just decide on that language right now.
I
I don't know what else we would do if we didn't have that language. So it seems like it makes sense to include what Lauren put in there.
I would agree.
Yeah, I'm fine with it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. Would that eliminate the annually, the chosen annually? If we put that language in, does that eliminate that, or does that stay in still?
In A, we have not yet decided that one. We can if we want to rehash that now. I think she had indicated maybe we want to have a think on that one in particular. This would be addressing the additional language or the option she provided us within C, filling the vacancy of the council president or council vice president.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the part that's being discussed up above is not the annual part, it's the, can you remove them if they're a bad actor for some reason?
Yes.
Okay. So the annual still stays in. They're still to be elected annually.
They are, yes, but
Yeah.
we may add some language in there to allow for a reorganization.
Thank you.
Well,
All right.
already. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I heard what you guys said. The annually, if we don't put something in there in some other place that says that the council can reorganize, then annually means 1 year, period. So if we want to allow for reorganization, then we need to put it in.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I guess, to me, it seems kind of, I don't know. You put something in there for a year, and by the time you figure out they're doing a bad job, you're 6 months into it. But anyway, but what if they became like, I don't know, incapacitated or something like that, where they couldn't perform their duties?
Well, that is a whole nother issue, and I will tell you, it's a crazy one. If anyone has followed the Fall River stuff lately, there was in the winter a lawsuit essentially saying that the mayor was not able to participate as the mayor because of the situation that he was in. And the Superior Court did what is not surprising, they punted. But it's a pretty big deal to decide that someone's not capable of functioning. And so if we were going to put that in there, we'd really need to think about how to word it. It's one thing to say we can reorganize at any time because we feel like it. It's another thing to say we can only reorganize if we've decided that the person in the position can't handle it or can't function, etc. So remember that if the president was not there because they were unable to be present, then the Sorry, I'm getting a text about a Norton thing, so I'm being bold. The basic bottom line is it's something. I don't know. It's something. It's just now I can't recall. Or what were we saying? Sorry.
Yeah, if the town council president were incapacitated, the vice president would step up.
Incapacitated, absent. Now that doesn't solve the problem if someone's, and you'll excuse me, drunk, or they have a psychotic break or something like that. They might still show up. They might not be able to function. I mean, probably trying to solve that through the charter isn't the best way to solve it. Probably the best way to solve it is for the vice president to say, you know what, we're going to take a break here. We'll be back in 5 minutes or something. Or to talk to the person, you know, offline and say, hey, you really can't handle this. But I don't know that there's a legislative fix to that. Other than adding in the language that is in the actual Fall River Charter that the court said didn't say what it said.
Okay.
So a lot of good that does. Okay.
But if the board votes to reorganize, do you need to state a reason? I mean, can't the reason just be that the counselor is not doing the job of the counselor, and you don't need to state that, you know, maybe they're having an issue or substance abuse or whatever you think it might be? Wouldn't that just be covered under the notion of reorganizing?
Yes, absolutely. So you don't have to specify a reason for reorganization. You can just say, provided, however, that the town council can reorganize from time to time upon a vote of whatever number of councilors.
Okay.
Okay. Which is where we were stuck. Not stuck, but where we were deliberating on the last time.
Laura, does anybody disagree with the 5? Because I think that's, you know, I know Dave suggested that, I'm fine with it. Does anybody else have a different number, or can we just?
I'm fine with 5.
Okay with 5. I would almost be okay with, I think I would be okay with 6 also. That's actually reducing it.
I think 5 is a reasonable bar.
I can definitely live with it personally.
Okay, I'm writing it down now.
Okay.
You guys can tell me the number, but I'm going to write it.
All right.
Yeah.
With 5.
All right. Does anybody feel very strongly against 5? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Not really, but you get the gist. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
I'm inclined to accept the language within C in filling the vacancy of the vice president.
Right, and again, that's just drafted to provide that whoever's going to be the vice president would just be doing it until, and the president, they'd just be doing it until the next election.
Correct. Is everybody okay with this language? Anybody have an issue with this language?
I'm fine with it.
Good.
Fine.
Okay,
I'm good.
excellent. Sandy, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay,
Good.
all right. I'm gonna move on. So we are going to, well, this is an easy one, bylaws.
You want to call it bylaws?
Yeah, I think so. That's consistent with what we are doing it now, and I kind of agree with what Carrie had said. Carrie said she felt that ordinances sound more like something coming from a city.
And it does. I will tell you that the Attorney General says that a town with a town council form of government is a city. So I'm just telling you that your bylaws right now, as a town, are reviewed by the Attorney General's office. So whenever you approve a bylaw, it goes to the AG, they review it to see if it's consistent with the law or to not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth. Now, whether you call them bylaws or otherwise, if this were to pass, it would be not, those bylaws would not be reviewed by the Attorney General.
Oh, who are they reviewed by?
By this town attorney.
Okay.
Now, it's not like we don't do that job normally as well, but it is, you know, it's a bigger responsibility for the town attorney.
Is there any reason to call it a bylaw versus an ordinance?
I think most people,
or vice versa,
bylaws from a town, ordinances from a city. So, you know, the town council will make orders. It'll give orders. It will, you know, and that's really why they're called ordinances. But I know this specific issue came up in Southbridge and they kept it as bylaws. It came up in North Attleboro, they kept it as bylaws. So
I can't, unless somebody can provide a good reason, I don't see the need to go through and amend wording everywhere.
Yep, that's fine. I mean, it's just a whatchamacallit, a delete and a find and replace. Mm-hmm. But certainly you're used to calling them bylaws, and it's, I think, a little bit less in people's faces if it's continued to be called bylaws. And Amherst also calls it bylaws, by the way.
I think it's also easier to explain to the public than trying to also explain, well, a bylaw is really just an ordinance, we just changed the name. Yep. It adds an unnecessary complication that we don't need.
Yep.
Does anybody disagree with me? Okay.
All right.
Bylaws.
Bylaws it is.
All right. This is, for the measure to be passed. 21 days has to elapse, and that allows time for a potential referendum. I think we had discussed this over the course of a good 2.5 very long meetings, and came to a conclusion that we were all happy with. So unless somebody has some very pressing issue, I'm not inclined to open this back up again for discussion. If somebody does want to discuss it, I'm happy to. Seeing nothing? All right, we're going to let that stay. Next is so this has to do with prohibiting a town council member from holding any other office. I honestly could not remember if we had ever discussed this, maybe while we were looking at somebody else's charter, but I'm not sure we've ever talked about it specifically for Norton. Somebody weigh in if I'm misremembering, please.
No, I remember talking about it, but I don't remember.
I don't think it was in relation to our charter specifically.
So I wanted to raise it as something that's worth thinking about. This issue of whether an employee or an elected official can hold office as a town councillor comes up in virtually every town. And the important thing to think about is whether it's so as a counselor, let's just say you worked for the school department, although it's not a great, but let's just say you couldn't vote on the school department budget. You could vote the bottom line budget, but you couldn't vote in the school department budget. So let's take a different department. Let's take conservation, right? So if an entity was in, I'm sorry, just hold on 1 second.
Okay. If it's Mike Units, tell him you're busy.
They're at the FinCom meeting and he's trying to
It's Mike Units. Don't tell him we're busy.
I didn't tell him that you said that.
Okay.
But in theory, I could hop over there and hop right back if you guys would be comfortable with that. What do you think?
That's fine. If you need to, sure.
Okay, I would appreciate it, and then I will come right back, I promise.
Okay. Sounds
Okay,
good.
okay,
All right.
thank you guys.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about, where did everybody go? All I see is David Wren.
I'm still here.
I'm here.
Okay, everybody just shut their video off is all.
Yeah, sorry, I was eating.
No, that's okay, but it looks like, no, Sandy, you're still here, right? Maybe? Alright, I can still see her in the participant list, so
I was gonna say, I see her name, but it's like it's on mute, yeah.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
on mute.
Okay. I just want to make sure nobody's dropping off, that's all. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So I know we had not talked about this section before. Are we inclined to, having read this, are people inclined to accept this language?
I just need some clarification. When it says hold any other town office or position, I'm assuming that it's referring to a paid employment position, not like another volunteer committee position.
Well, I was viewing it differently. Town office was who has been elected or appointed, who exercises a portion of sovereign authority of the town whose duty are not simply ministerial. That's the town officer. So,
Well, right now, as a highway superintendent, I can't run for selectman.
so that's a paid position. But you could sit on IDC, for example.
Right. Right, that's what I'm trying to distinguish is between like someone that sits in the IDC versus someone who's an employee for the town, right?
Right. It seems to be related to conflict of interest specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, we can wait for clarification. Are we in agreement that if it does not include voluntary boards or commissions?
I think would it be specifically voluntary appointed positions, right?
Yeah, because it does actually say that election or appointment to a regional or state office, sorry. Hold any other position, no former counselor, okay, so. All right, let's bounce back to that one. Because I don't know the answer and we could just go around in circles and not have the full picture. This one I didn't actually know about. The Housing Authority, apparently when switching to a town council form of government, we can switch that to an appointed versus an elected position.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I would be inclined to do so. Does anybody have a strong opinion?
Fine with keeping it the way it is today. I don't remember this being raised as an issue anywhere.
No. No, the only time I actually remember it being an issue was somebody had not realized that their term was up and hadn't pulled papers to actually be on the ballot. So I was approached by somebody to just write her in, please and thank you, so that she wanted to stay and just did not realize when her term ended. So other than that, it doesn't seem like we're having an issue getting people to sit on that particular board.
Well, I guess I was thinking if it was appointed, you might get more interest if people are interested in running for the position.
That is true.
Because the way it is now, I believe they run, no one runs against them.
It's an appointment anyways.
Right. It's an appointment anyway, right?
Yeah. And that very well may be how some of those seats were actually initially filled. This is the weird one where the state, there's 5 seats and the state has an appointment on it as well.
Right.
Yeah, and I think about how, if I remember correctly, when I was looking at like which races have been contested and not contested, I don't believe Housing Authority is ever or even rarely a contested race. It's usually just, like you said, the one candidate.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's 5 total. 1 is a state appointee. 19, 20, 21, and 23. So they've all got, they've all got different terms.
I don't know.
Do we want to address that it is not a contested seat and perhaps discuss making it appointed as David has suggested?
I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a political type of board.
No.
So I don't say you need to have an election.
I think it's required by the state, actually.
Yeah, that's the board itself, yes.
Yeah.
And I think appointed would get more. I think you'd get, if anything, you certainly wouldn't get any less interest. You'd get more interest.
Yeah, it could make things easier. Does anybody feel strongly about leaving it as is? Okay. Everybody is in favor of changing the housing authority to an appointed position from an elected one. David?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Janie?
Yes.
Dave Heaney?
Yep.
Keith?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Who am I missing? Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Moving on. Sorry. Ballot position. So as of right now, the way our current charter is written, they go alphabetically, and I think the incumbent goes first, if I'm not mistaken. And then in alphabetical order, yeah. She has proposed going by random drawing. I'm absolutely fine with that. Does anybody have an opinion?
I like it.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. Alphabetical is okay with me too.
Yeah. Kerry weighed in. Green name should be determined by lottery, not alphabetical order, or listed by incumbent and challenger. So she's in favor of the change that town council has made. Okay. Is anybody against this change that was made?
Now, I mean, I guess my only comment is that this is just to make the life of the Board of Election Commissioner easier. So they have to meet. You could just do it alphabetically.
Yeah, but it's not that difficult to.
But you gotta meet though, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
I would hope they're meeting prior to an election fairly regularly.
Yeah, I'm only throwing it out there. I just I don't really know.
Okay.
Do we want to throw this past Lucia and get her opinion on it, or we just, to David's point, to see if that'd be for them?
I'm not against it. I'm happy to reach out to her.
Yeah.
You'd feel better, David?
I guess I would, in the sense that I agree. I mean, on the surface, it obviously seems like kind of almost a silly discussion. But, you know, we're making a decision that affects them. Mm-hmm. Seems like we should have some say. Well, some say we should understand if there is any ramification.
Okay, we'll table this. I'm making a note right now to follow up with Lucia. I'll come back with her response. What's the next one? It shall be printed below each question. Oh, I thought this seemed very reasonable. 3.4, information to voters. If we had a question that needed some statement or clarification. This seemed like a reasonable addition. Does anybody disagree?
No, I think it's good.
Yeah, I agree. More information about it.
Yep.
I 100% agree. I think sometimes yes or no is confusing because people don't know what the yes, even though they're reading the question, what does yes mean and what does no mean. So I support that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I sometimes think the questions are written specifically to confuse people into voting a certain way. You immediately imply yeses, you know, with something good. Does anybody feel strongly about this wording going in?
Oh.
Okay. All right, that one's on. Vacancies. I don't remember this comment. Need to decide how this will be handled. Should be a recommendation from the. Oh, I do remember. Okay. Should this be a recommendation from the elected board to town council and the town council appointment until the next regular election, or should the town manager make the appointment? So this is in the instance of a vacancy on a multiple member body. And this is an elected position. So at this point, that only includes planning board, school committee, and board of assessors, since we have removed the Norton Housing Authority from elected. I was in favor of the recommendation going from the elected board to town council for a vote and appointment. Does anybody feel strongly about the town manager making that appointment, given it is an elected position?
No, I agree with you. If it's an elected position, I think the elected officials should be the one to appoint or fill it.
Is anybody in disagreement? Okay. to the last question with regards to the 21 days. I feel like this is under recall, sorry. I feel like we had done our full due diligence and probably a little bit more on this entire topic. And unless somebody felt very strongly, and it was one of the last things we discussed, I'm less inclined to open it back up, but if somebody does feel strongly, I will. Okay. Similar to the first item, and I did want to point out that there is a typo in here. I've already raised it with Lauren. This should state recall petition once it's filed with the town clerk and the town clerk certifies it. That's when the 30-day time should start, not with the filing of the affidavit. If you look up here, the town clerk has 3 days, which would technically render then the 30 days down to potentially 27. And we had specifically talked about that. So I just made a note to Lauren that we had switched this clause here. And same. So again, I think we had kind of fully exhausted the discussion on timeline and percentages, unless somebody felt strongly about opening it back up again. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Moving on to this, I didn't understand. Did anybody read this and or interpret this as meaning to be write-in candidates only?
Laura, can you just call out what specifically you're talking about right now?
I'm sorry, I forgot you're not looking at. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry, I forgot. So we're in section 3.6. D is in David, nomination of candidates. Her comment was, if there's interest in not including the candidate's name on the ballot, this would be deleted. Unless you went all right in, and maybe that was her intention, I don't understand how you have a election to recall and re-elect or elect a new candidate without having the candidate's names on the ballot. So I would be interested in hearing what other people's interpretation of this was. And if we don't have any, then we'll probably just skip it and come back to it.
Was she referring to the fact that we talked about pushing off to a different election?
Yeah, I was wondering that, but even then,
so they wouldn't be on that ballot, they'd be on a different ballot.
Yeah. Well, then she goes on to say the next portion, maybe that is what she meant. Because we were going back and forth as to whether to, but I think we had come to a conclusion that we were not going to subject the town to a second election or holding it into another election.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you decided that after she left.
Okay. All right. Well, then this makes this section a little bit clearer. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, the way I was reading it going, well, how are you supposed to elect people with just write-ins? So, okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on from there. Just a heads up that we had also decided to remove this clause, and I've already given that to Lauren. Housing Authority, we have decided for that reason, in my opinion, this board could be changed. Okay, we've made that decision. Okay, we are under section 4-2, administrative powers and duties. This is under the town manager section, clause B. Powers, duties, and responsibilities the town manager shall include, but shall not be limited to the following. She had specified with regards to be entrusted with the administration of town personnel system, including but not limited to adopting, administering personnel policies, practices, or rules and regulations. She specifically highlighted that clause and stated this would permit town manager to adopt these policies, rules, etc. I didn't see on its face any issue with that. I didn't know whether anybody else did, but I was also looking for clarification as to why she pointed it out. Does anybody have a thought, or should we wait for her to return?
I guess what she's saying is, I believe that, town manager would like determine the vacation part. Well, I guess there's union contracts, but excluding union, things like vacation policies and things like that. To be carried over.
Maybe she's brought it to our attention because by a conflict of interest, I guess, for lack of a better word, by having, so adopting, administering personnel policies and practice rules and regulations. I think by her saying can adopt these policies, rules, etc., meaning they would also apply to him and or her, and then maybe be a conflict. Do we want the person? I don't know who else it would be. They're in charge of. I guess it could be. Again, I think we need some clarification from Lauren if what exactly she was getting at here. If it has to do with, do we want the town council to make decisions with respect to some of the personnel policies related directly to the town manager versus other employees? I'm confused enough to defer for a minute until she pops us back in. Section C. So it previously just stated to fix the compensation of all officers and employees appointed by the town manager within the limits established by appropriations. She has added the language, and at the discretion of the town manager, to enter into individual employment contracts with employees, subject to such plan for the salary, fringe benefits, and other conditions of employment, including but not limited to severance pay, reimbursement for expenses incurred in the performance of duties or office, liability insurance, and leave. This seems reasonable. This seems like what I would expect a town manager to do or to delegate to someone. Does anybody feel differently?
He does that now.
Yeah, I feel the same as she's almost just kind of defining more. Does she want us just to define more? We put in that one sentence. Does she want us to use that language just to be very clear?
Yeah. Just to elaborate.
Right, would be my guess, and I would agree. It sounds reasonable, and I would have the expectation that a town manager would do that.
Anybody not agree with that assessment?
Nope, looks good to me.
Okay. Let's move on. Same section under G. She's added additional language, and does the commission want to consider language similar to the highlighted? So To begin, it starts to have full jurisdiction over the rental and use of all town facilities and properties except property under the control of school committee, board of library directors, or conservation commission. Town manager shall be responsible for the maintenance and repair of all town buildings and facilities placed under the town manager's control by this charter, by bylaw, or by vote, or otherwise. And then she's added, and may at the request of and in accord with the applicable memorandum of understanding provide for such maintenance and repair of buildings or facilities under the control of the school committee, board of library, it looks like we're missing a comma, board of library directors, or conservation commission. This seemed perfectly reasonable to me.
I agree.
Anybody disagree? Hearing nobody? Okay, let's move on. Again, same section, moving to O. To inquire at any time into the conduct or office or performance of duty of any officer or employee, department, board, commission, or other town agency, whether appointed or elected. Her comment was the commission suggested changing this language to under the town manager's jurisdiction, and then she goes on to say, let's discuss, so I'm going to defer to her, and we'll come back on that one. I'm also inclined to defer to her on letter R, with regards to setting a limit. I think it sounds reasonable, but I have no idea what a reasonable dollar amount would be. And I would defer to Lauren for guidance. Unless somebody wants to throw a number out or take a stab at it.
No, I would guess 5,000, but
Yeah. And then I was also wondering, well, I guess if we've got a charter review that's going to look at it every 5 years, I'm looking at it like, well, it's not permanent, but should we make it a percentage of budget or something along those lines? But hang on. Lauren's coming back in.
Thank you.
Lauren, do we have you back?
You do?
Hi.
Hi.
We've actually made some decent progress.
Excellent. I'm very
Yes.
glad to hear it. Thank you for allowing me to leave and return.
Not a problem. There are some things that it just said let's discuss, so we didn't even know where to start.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just recap it very quickly. Where did we leave off? Honestly, okay. Now it's coming back.
Yes, we were at prohibitions is where we left off.
I think we are generally inclined, provided this does not include voluntary committees. And we were confused about that. Similar to Council on Aging, IDC, the Historic District Commission, things of that nature.
So we would have to address that specifically, so we can add language in there. But the concept is that, that counselors might act as liaisons to this is just kind of the normal-ish course, is that they might act as liaisons to those committees, but that the counselor wouldn't even serve, my God, that dog, wouldn't even serve in a voluntary capacity like that. You'd only serve if it was ex officio. So if, for example, there was going to be a member of the Council on Aging, then that would be an ex officio position and not a separate position. And if that person then stopped being a counselor, then their position as a member of the Council on Aging would also end.
Okay, so similar to the liaison to SERPED. So I think it specifies that a member of the Board of Selectmen will serve as the, and I guess in this case it would be the ex officio.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the reasons for that, again, is because the council is essentially the legislative body, and so you don't want to have the council having these separate interests, and so everybody has one interest, and that's serving as a member of the council. And so even if you are serving on SERPED, for example, you're still doing that in your capacity as a counselor.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think that's what we currently do for our finance committee for the same kinds of reasons, right? Because they're making decisions, and especially now where the town council is our legislative body and they're also making the financial decisions, I feel like it's the same parameters should be holding true for them.
Yep. So essentially, I think the way to think about it is it's a choice. It's like you can serve on any number of appointed committees with no limitation, especially if they're not paid. But if you choose to be a counselor, that's your official role for 3 years. That's basically what this is saying. Where it says town office or position other than a member of the council. So an office is something like serving on the Council on Aging. It's a particular position. It's found in law. It has responsibilities that are, that exists, that they're substantive. As compared to serving on an ad hoc committee, that would just be a position. It's not really another office because it's ad hoc, so it doesn't have any independent power. But and that would also be prohibited, except if the goal was to have a member of the council serve on the ad hoc committee, and then they could do it.
Okay. Sorry, somebody wanted to speak?
Yeah, it was me coughing, but I'm okay with the language.
Okay. Denise, I know you had brought it up, but having listened to Lauren, especially understanding that they are now going to be acting as what will constitute as a finance committee going forward, I can see the point of that. Did we lose Denise? I did lose Kevin. He'll be back in a minute.
I'm here, and yes, I'm fine now with that clarification. Thank you.
Okay. So you're okay with the language as inserted?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody feel strongly against this? Okay. Hearing nobody, we're inclined to accept this. We have also decided that we are going to make the Norton Housing Authority a appointed position as opposed to elected going forward.
Okay, so that we'll address that, and then we have to deal with that in the transitional provisions.
Yep, I did see that at the end. Okay. We are in agreement with your change to ballot position. Section 3-3.
3-3. Right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. Again, that's something you guys probably hadn't talked about, but that is a way to kind of have things be fair.
Yes. No, everybody was in agreement with that.
Or I think on that one you were going to reach out for town clerk.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Pay no attention to me. Somebody had thought that we didn't want to put any additional stress on the Board of Election Commissioners. We were inclined to reach out to town clerk to see whether they had a strong opinion one way or the other. So apologies. I thought.
No, that's okay.
I misspoke.
Typically, especially in a situation like with a council, you're going to see a lottery rather than, without a lottery, it's alphabetical order. So it'd be incumbent and then alphabetical order, which just seems, especially when you're voting for fewer positions, it turns into a bigger issue. So a lottery is something that they should be able to do pretty easily.
Okay.
Not that I'm going to speak for Lucia, but I'm pretty certain that that's something they can handle.
Okay. Lauren, did you say if it was alphabetical, the incumbents go on top? Is that what you said?
Yes, the incumbent goes first, and then it's in alphabetical order versus it being random lottery drawn names, but with the words candidate for re-election next to the name of the person who's seeking re-election.
Oh, okay. Because I was okay with alphabetical, but I didn't realize the incumbent would go on top.
Yep, incumbent first.
Right.
That's good of you to be okay with it, because your last name starts with a W, so you're really...
Yeah, no, I'd be on the bottom. Yeah, well,
Hasn't hurt you so far.
I guess it doesn't hurt to ask Alicia what she thinks, but I guess I'm more inclined to think that it should be my drawing, if that's the case.
If you still want me to, I can reach out to Lucia, David.
You know, I mean, Lauren's obviously much more, I think Lauren has a good feel for what the town clerk's going to think is reasonable or not. If she's saying it's reasonable, then I'm fine.
Anybody feel differently? Okay. Then my prior misstatement stands.
Yeah. I mean, we had it right in the beginning.
Yeah. I didn't want to listen to him anyways. Information to the voters. Yes, we like this. We would like to add it.
Okay.
With regards to 3-5, filling of vacancies, I believe we had agreed that, yes, for the elected bodies, which is now left at 3, we were going to let them make a recommendation to town council and let town council make that appointment.
Okay, so that's a little bit different. So it's it's basically what I said in my comment.
Yeah.
Okay. And can the council override that recommendation, or do they have to appoint a person that's been recommended?
I thought we had decided that this was going to be a joint vote.
Okay. That's fine. Because that's how it is. It says a joint appointment.
Yeah. So my understanding of this, and somebody correct me if I'm misremembering, that the town council and the elected body would jointly vote on this. I can see the recommendation having to come from somewhere, so. Anybody have any issues with that?
I don't. Okay.
All right. Hearing none, that will be our decision. The body with the vacancy will make the recommendation for town council, and they will vote jointly.
Okay.
Although so planning board has 7, board of assessors has 3. I don't see anybody really inclined to argue with the board of assessors recommendation.
Yeah, so one of the benefits of this is that the board of assessors would be outvoted every single time.
Right.
So a joint appointment really would be the council's choice. So having that recommendation for appointment come from the body with the vacancy, you're kind of balancing that power.
Right. Okay, that seems reasonable. We were not inclined to change 3-6B
Okay.
at all. I did have a comment to you within B. I'll make that edit and send that to you.
Okay. So I just want to reiterate, just in case anybody was wondering, the reason that the number is low to start is, and it's not actually that, sometimes it's 10, it's just that that's an affidavit to start the process. So basically you have to have enough people to demonstrate that there's interest in pursuing this before the town goes through the process of preparing the papers and doing all the work.
Mm-hmm. no issues, I'm gonna move forward.
And the 30 days you're gonna keep?
Yes.
Okay.
This one we had some, until I forget who it was, somebody clarified what you were getting at. My interpretation of this was there would be no candidates on the ballot, it would just all be write-in. But then somebody reminded me that that was the point at which we think you had left at the last meeting and we had not come to this decision.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I love that interpretation. I'm going to put that in my book of me not doing a very good job explaining things. So here's the basic rule. If you want to have an election where where a person will be elected, you need at least 64 days from the day the body votes to call for the election and the date of the election. So here you're having this long period of 64 days, not fewer than and not more than, because you need the 64 days no matter what to be able to call for an election at which a person will be elected. It's 2 weeks available to circulate nomination papers. Then they go to the Board of Registrars or Election Commissioners for certification. Then they go to the town clerk not later than 35 days before the election. So essentially, if you wanted to be able to have a recall election happen more quickly and wind up with a vacancy, then you don't have to have the names of candidates on the ballot, and the person who's recalled would just be recalled, and then the vacancy would get filled in the way that it's provided for in other sections. So, we just said, for example, that you could have the Board of Assessors make a recommendation to the town council for appointment of an assessor. So in my example, let's say the assessor is recalled, and then I'm gonna sneeze, so sorry. It's gonna happen. All right, maybe not. If the other two remaining assessors would then make a recommendation to the town council, and the town council and the Board of Assessors, the remaining board members, would vote to appoint someone until the next annual election. And then the remainder of the term would go on the ballot. So again, I think it's worthwhile thinking you still will be having an annual town election. So the difference between recall in a city where there's not an election for 2 years or 4 years, let's say for some cities, here there would be an election that would follow relatively quickly, at which that person's name could be included on the ballot. Where the office could be included on the ballot. The minimum amount of time between the time of calling an election and holding an election on a question is 35 days.
So,
If you want to have candidates, you need at least 64 days from the day they vote. If you don't want to have candidates, then you need to have at least 35 days from the day they vote. And the vacancies are filled in accordance with the other sections of the charter.
Okay. This is a little different. We hadn't talked about this. I don't hate that idea, but I'm interested to hear what the rest of the group thinks. Not everybody at once.
I'm still trying to understand.
All right, maybe I can explain it one more time, if that's okay.
Yep.
So if you want to fill a vacancy that's created by the recalling of an officer, let's just use a town councilor, for example, because those are probably the more popular people to recall. So let's say there's a recall effort to recall a town councilor. And that at the same election that we recall this town councilor, we want an opportunity to vote to elect their replacement. In that circumstance, we need at least 64 days to pass from the date that the council calls for the recall election and the day of the recall election. Because we need 64 days for that candidate's information to be, for the people to decide whether to run, to submit their nomination papers, to have their papers certified, to give the clerk the go-ahead. If you did not fill a vacancy that's created by recall, then there's a 35-day requirement between the day the council votes to call for the election and the day of the election. And that's because there are no candidates. So if what this language would change, and it says, if you look in E right now that Laura has up, it says, right before the blue, it says, if recalled, such person shall be deemed removed immediately. We would add a line that said, and the vacancy shall be filled in accordance with the provisions of whatever it is of this charter. So the town council, we would go to what we talked about earlier, which is they could fill it. If it's longer than a certain time, it says they shall. If it's less than a certain period, there's no requirement. If it's Board of Assessors, we have that situation where they recommend a person to fill the vacancy. And then the office would go back on the ballot at the next regular election for the remainder of the unexpired term. So let's say it's a town councilor in the first year of their term, then that year there would be a 2-year to fill a vacancy town council position on the ballot.
So if I'm remembering correctly, the only objection we had to not having the person or not having the position filled at the same election as the recall was the cost of having a special election. So if we're taking that sort of that factor out of there, then I think, if I remember, that was the only objection. So it seems like, now we're throwing it back into the different options where they could have a special election, or they could just leave it, or they just appoint it, or they could leave it open, depending on how many months were left.
Yep, it would kick it back to the way you fill vacancies in the position. So Board of Assessors and whatever the other board was, it would be the joint appointment. If it was until the next regular election, if it was in the council, we would have to follow the windy way. That's a legal term. It's a very important legal term.
Yeah, I kind of prefer kicking it back to the process that's already in place normally, rather than creating another one to try to remember and manage through.
I would agree. I feel like it makes this a little easier to manage. We had so much conversation about this, but I feel like now that we've sorted out, up above and going back to how are you going to fill it, it just makes this a little more manageable. So I would be in agreement with what Denise just said as well.
I'm not sure if I feel strongly enough either way. The one benefit I do see to being able to reduce it down to 35 days is it eliminates or it reduces the time of disruption in half, essentially, almost. Now, granted, it does add another layer of complexity because then that whatever body had the recalled member then does have to go on and then have a method of, or use their method of replacing that member that's been recalled. So maybe not. I think I've talked myself out of it now.
I think it also, if you're looking at the 30 days, it's a quicker turnaround, and depending on the timing, it could be super disruptive to try to fill that position, and then if there's like another election right away, or I think this just gives you a little more flexibility to be able to then fill that position in the way that makes the most sense.
Meaning, makes the most sense, meaning using the election process at the recall.
I'm thinking of the town council. They can call for a special if depending on how much time is left in the term. They can appoint someone. They have that flexibility depending on the timing.
Okay, so you are, sorry, I did misunderstand you the first time. So you were thinking then of reducing this down, where's it? This section here down to the 35 days and leaving the replacement of that recalled official up to the, what's defined in the charter as the method for replacement. Bless you.
Thank you, and yes.
Sandy stole Lauren's sneeze.
True. So this is one of those things, I do think you're talking about disruption. You have a recall provision right now. Recall is disruptive. I mean, that I'm trying to scroll up, but that won't happen. That always is the case. But I do wonder about the number of days, 30 days. So 30 days is a long time. And I think it's going to be that it's easier to get the number of voters that you need. Have you talked to Lucia about what that 15% is?
Yes.
And what's the number?
15% is, give me a second, 1,886.
So I think it's much more common to see 21 days. The idea is either you can get there and get the people to sign and get the thing moving, or you can't. And so, allowing 30 days, I don't know, I feel like that's a long time, especially if it's going to go directly to a vote. If it's going to go right from getting in the number of signatures directly to an election. But obviously that's a decision that you guys have to make. I do think that it's useful having the not more than 50% for one precinct, because that means that there's kind of a widespread support for the action. But I do think 30 days is a long time.
Something that's actually interesting is we actually didn't put that stipulation in ours.
Really?
No.
So I did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't like 30 days. I would say 21 days is probably a fair number.
Okay. I think there's...
You should have jumped in there sooner, Laura. I mean, you let me go on and on and on.
I didn't know you were going to bring that particular clause. I was trying not to point out anything too glaring, but yeah, no, we did not decide on that.
Okay.
So I think there has been some concern stated by some of the members that even this threshold is impossible. Reducing the number of days without also reducing the percentage required is obviously going to trip that up even further. I think somebody had done some analysis and had determined that nobody with a 15% requirement for recall has been successful in this state in decades.
Yeah, that's a high number, and the 30 days is also a high number. So maybe you want to reduce that. Again, I think it's that balance between making it too hard and too easy. You really want to make it that it's work, but not impossible. And remember, recall really, I think maybe it was David who said earlier, do you even know within a year whether someone's doing a good job or not? So it is certainly a balance to find. You don't want people to be able to be recalled willy-nilly, or whatever the word is, because that's terrible for government. That's going to cost you money. You're going to be back and forth to elections. On the other hand, you don't want to, if you want recall, you want to be able to actually achieve that. 10% isn't an unusual number. 12% maybe, but that's something to think about.
Okay. I'm going to throw this out here, and then I'm going to share my screen with the decision chart that we used the last time. If we're going to contemplate a reduction in the number of days by a third, I think we should consider a commensurate reduction in the number of signatures by a third as well, meaning bringing it to 10%. But if you want to hang on 1 second, I'm going to switch over to that other document. And I just need to make sure I'm in the right tab. Okay, so give me 1 second. I just want to make sure everybody can see. So we had reviewed kind of the set of the most either local or similar sized towns. And hopefully everybody can see this. I'm going to move you guys up a little bit, get you out of the way. So here's where we are presently. Here's what we had proposed. Where's the number of days? So number of days ranged anywhere from 10 to, we were on the high end at 30, Barnstable on the low end at 10, with signatures ranging anywhere from the low end of 5 all the way up to 20. If we would like to make this quick and painless, is anybody disinclined to accept a 1/3 reduction in both the percentage and the timeline, given Lauren's guidance?
I'm okay with that.
Good with me.
Okay. Everybody's in agreement?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Andy, you're okay too?
So we're changing it to 10% in 21 days, is that the?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
We're reducing votes by 1/3. That seems fair, based on the decisions we've made. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to the other document. I'm just gonna make sure I find Carrie's. Okay, I got it. Everybody sees that, right? Yep, I'm screen sharing. Okay. All right, so we're going to switch that from 21 days to from 30 and from 15 to 10%. Now, based on that, I forget how we got here. I know we were talking about reducing this number down to 35 to make the process less disruptive. And I forget where we left. I know a few people seemed to be coming to consensus that 35 days seemed like a more reasonable amount of time to reduce the disruption, and then let the body or the committee that had the successful recall fill the vacancy in the manner that we've already decided has been chosen for the charter.
I agree with that.
Yep, I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. That's an important one, so let's just do a quick straw poll. Dave Heaney, you okay with it?
Yep.
Denise?
Yep.
Janie?
Yeah.
Keith?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Did we lose Kevin again?
Yeah, he said yes.
So yes.
Yes.
He's still showing on the list.
I said yes. Can you hear me?
Kevin, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Laura, we can all hear him. Can you hear us?
Yeah, he
I don't
said
know whether
yes.
you can or cannot. We cannot hear you. I am inclined to say yes as well.
Laura, can you hear us?
If and when you come back
Laura?
and we can hear you,
I don't
or
think
send
you
me
can
a
hear
text if you disagree with this, and we'll come back to that. Hopefully you can hear me.
Someone put it in the chat.
Love technology. Okay, moving on. You can't hear us, but we're all talking.
I texted her.
Excellent. They can all hear me. Fabulous.
Laura, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
We can always hear you. Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Fabulous. I have no idea what to do with this.
You have her dial in?
Pause and replay. All right. I'm going to dial back in. I just tested it. And it's telling me it's working fine.
Laura, can you hear us?
I hear you now, yes.
Okay.
That is so weird. I'm running the test thing on the Zoom and it's saying it's working fine. I apologize. Sorry. Kevin, how'd you vote on that one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Moving on. Norton Housing Authority, we've already discussed. Um, 4-2, section clause B. Lauren, can you just clarify why you brought this to our attention?
I can try. Which section was it again?
4-2B, as in boy.
4-2B. So this issue of who adopts these policies is, it can turn into a thing if it's not specifically addressed. So here the goal is where these people are going to be working for the manager. Essentially, the manager has responsibility for coming up with personnel policies, practices, rules, and regulations. And so that essentially, rather than there being a personnel board or a personnel committee, unless the town manager wants to appoint a personnel committee, the town administrator would be responsible for preparing that information. Now, it makes good sense because they're also going to be negotiating the collective bargaining agreements. But, I just wanted to point that out. I think in the version that is in your charter, it says like to be responsible for, but it doesn't say administering and adopting and administering personnel policies. So it's that adoption language that I just wanted you to pay attention to.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Lauren? Given the guidance just provided, does anybody have any issues with the language added?
Not me.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and accept that and move on to the next. We were under the assumption, Lauren, that C was just an elaboration of what they would be responsible for, and if so, we were inclined to accept this.
Yeah.
Unless there's something here we needed to know specifically.
So there's not always the ability to have contracts with employees, and certain towns it's kind of the norm, but it can also be that it's really not authorized unless there's specific authorization for it. So this language to me makes clear that the manager has the ability to enter into individual employment contracts, even if it doesn't say so in the statute. It basically gives people employees a clearer view of what their position is. So I think it's desirable to have it, and again, that would be something that would be reported to the council. The council would fund the lines, and it would be then reported as well.
Okay. Anybody have any issues with that?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move on. We were inclined to accept the language that you added in G.
Okay. Let me get to that. G. Yep. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yep.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in my experience, there is great value in centralizing these functions. So by putting this in here, it allows the town, essentially, if the school committee or the board of library directors or the conservation commission asked for the town to provide assistance, it could be done, without having to redo the charter. So it's just a way to leave that opportunity open.
Janie, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to, I don't even know if my question falls here in this portion of the draft charter, because I wanted to have a discussion about the Conservation Commission, and I think it's more maybe for the group. You had already addressed it for us at one point, Lauren. We had talked about putting the Conservation Commission under the umbrella of the DPW, but we had some questions in regard to some state guidelines, some limitations in doing that. And we had talked about that on March 23rd. I think that was our first remote participation, and you were there as well. So we answered a few questions. We just never really went back to it in terms of, should the Conservation Commission fall under the umbrella of the DPW that would be created.
Okay.
So I guess I'm just opening that discussion to the rest of the board too, because we did discuss that, I think, at length, and we had some concerns and we had those questions and we asked them, but we never really came back to it. So I think it's a valuable conversation to have.
Okay. Do we want to do that now here, or do we want to wait till we get to the DPW section?
And I'm fine either way. I didn't know where it was appropriate to bring it up, to be honest with you. I just happened to see Conservation Commission there, so I did. So if you want to defer, that's fine.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think let's go in order. I did see where it does come up, and it's probably in the next, no, it's in the next section, after the next section. If you don't mind hanging on.
No, not at all. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So I think we were previously on board with what was trying to be accomplished here, having heard Lauren's further clarification. I don't feel any differently. I'm still inclined to accept this. I think this seems very reasonable. Does anybody feel differently?
No, I don't know if it's the right place to mention it, but it's missing a comma.
Yeah, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, the weird thing is, on the draft that I have, it does not.
Oh, hang on. Let me check the original one. It might just be Carrie deleted. Carrie's she's trying to thwart you.
Sabotage.
We'll look at that again, but I went immediately, I'm like, wait, there's a typo, but it doesn't show up in mine.
Trying to get to that section in the other one. No, it's missing there too. I think you put it in after the fact.
Okay, maybe I did. I don't know.
I think you did it at 12:01.
Yeah, exactly.
Next
Yeah.
Thursday.
I sent it later than 11:59, but I decided that I could give myself permission to put 11:59 on there, so.
I'm sure there was a bio break or something in there, so yeah. All right.
I think that gets us
Okay.
to O, maybe?
Oh, yes. And this is where this is where I think, right around here, we looked at O and said, well, we need to find out what she wants to discuss, and then we got to R and we didn't know what the amount was, so.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's do O first. So my issue with O is that essentially, if we say under the town manager's jurisdiction, then what does that mean? And let's just say there's bad apple or apples on the council. You do want there to be the ability for the council to do investigations of any board, committee, or officer, and I think you want to give that authority as well to the town manager. So I would leave it, and because otherwise we need to say what does under the town manager's jurisdiction mean, and does that mean not the council? Does it mean not the board of assessors? Does it mean not the planning board, not the school? So I wouldn't limit it.
I think the reason we did this was, I think we felt uncomfortable with the idea of a town employee at the end of the day, town manager, investigating an elected board.
I get it. I mean, I really do. I think though and again, this is just for hypothetical sake. Let's say that the planning board was misusing, and I'm not suggesting that they are in any way, so again, just a complete hypothetical, was misusing their consultant fund, right? So why isn't it important for the town manager to be able to investigate that? I think it is. Let's say the council was, making backroom deals about who gets a street sign where, should that not be able to be something that's investigated? Now, public records requests can be used for that purpose, but bottom line is, I think you're asking the town manager to be in charge of the executive functioning of the town, and that would include looking into these other boards if need be. Now, if the town manager overstepped his or her authority and did investigations and without any kind of sense of responsibility or appropriateness, the council could remove that person. So the council still retains the ability to, to kind of keep control over the town's resources. But bottom line is, I do think that there's nothing. I guess I just don't see what the line should be for the town manager. Let's say, I guess another kind of concept would be, let's say that a single member of the council is, directing a town official, a town employee to do something, and that town employee is uncomfortable. So, would it be that the manager shouldn't be able to say to the council president, look, I have some real concerns about how this isn't working and I want to have that addressed? I don't know. I think it's good to say it out loud. It's a check and a balance, although I do understand, your point about elected officials. Certainly he could, it could be not the elected board, but the employees that work for that board ultimately. But anyway, that's where it's coming from. If you choose not to do that, it's not, I won't personally be affected. I think that's a policy choice, but I just do see it as kind of just ensuring that what needs to be investigated can be.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I understand your point.
I think my concern would be more, the town manager already has a considerably large amount of power under this, charter. And my concern is that they could abuse this if there's a committee or something that doesn't follow along with his or her way of thinking, and kind of misuse this investigation power to try to, I guess, interfere with people's ability to think on their own.
So if that's the case then, and we say under the town manager's jurisdiction, or maybe what we would say is other than elected boards, it's just, I guess I just come back to, who's watching over then the planning board's use of its consultant fund, or the Board of Assessors preparation of X, Y, or Z report. It just seems like we're still kind of facing the risk here, but without any ability to address it.
David, were you going to say something?
No, I was just absorbing all that. I mean, I guess there are other ways though to do it. Anybody could ask for request information, public information request. I guess I'm leery.
I get it from, let's say, if it's a misuse of finances. Let's say we've got a I'm trying to think of how to phrase this tactfully.
What if there's a personnel issue, meaning?
Yeah, I'm thinking, yes, there's sexual harassment, for example.
Or even just pressuring or making you feel uncomfortable. Yeah, how do you deal with that? And I think, that it's, I'm not suggesting in Norton, but I think there are other places where there has been difficulty dealing with the behavior of elected officials to staff, whether it's overstepping in terms of telling them to do something in particular, like I told you I wanted whatever street to be paved, versus, some inappropriate other type of conduct. But, I think the idea of this is to allow the manager to get the information that's needed to make some good decisions. Maybe, and the problem of having, you could say they would report that they did the investigation, but then we have people's privacy rights that are affected potentially. So perhaps it's maybe to inquire, maybe you want to say following notification to the council president or something, so that it's clear what's, that the manager is going in that direction. Or maybe you just change it back to under the town manager's jurisdiction. I think we're at a hold on this.
I think I might want to think about this a little bit more. I do see exactly where you're coming from. I also see the point that was being made by Denise. But I am also thinking of a situation where there could be some sort of harassment or hostility, and there's no, I don't know how a town manager protects the employee if it's being perpetrated by an elected board and we haven't given them that power.
look around a little and see what other towns' recent charters have in there, and then come back to it. Because I think there's, obviously, David, your points are very well taken. Maybe there's a different way I can think about writing it that would provide you some comfort.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking like you think about how like the federal government works with, investigator generals and things like that. Maybe he appoints somebody to investigate.
Right, well, that is typically, that often is what happens if there's a personnel issue, is that there will be someone appointed to conduct an investigation. Let me see what I can find and see if there's any language that gets us closer to being acceptable to everyone.
Yeah. I can still see David's issue with that. He could just get somebody to do his or her bidding.
I think ideally it would be, he appoints somebody with notice to the town council or the president, or whatever appropriate, to somebody on the council, which I guess in most cases would be the president, perhaps. Plus, he may be investigating the president, so I'm not sure where you go there. But,
Yep. All right. I think let's come back to that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It seems like we just started talking about this. We seemed inclined. We just have no idea what the dollar amount should be, and or should it be a percentage of budget so that it adapts over time.
Mm-hmm. I don't have the answer to that. I think it's it's really what number feels appropriate, and maybe that's something that you do want to talk to the town manager about to get a feel for that. The Board of Selectmen has the ability to settle litigation if there's an appropriation for it, and if it's after a particular time of the year, then with the approval of DOR. There's not a dollar amount in the same way, but for the council, it does seem at some point that they would want to weigh in on whether to settle the case. So that would be the hook there that allows that. So you could figure out what that is. How much of the budget feels significant. Is it 50,000? Is it 100,000? Is it $1 million? I'm going to guess it's the 50,000 range.
All of it seems significant right now.
Yeah.
Every penny. Yeah.
Well, just remember, in terms of settlements, and this is one of those things that, again, you're not thinking about particular people, you're just kind of at arm's length to think about this, is that a settlement requires that the council go into executive session to discuss. Now you have 7 more people that know whatever the nitty-gritty is in order to come to that decision. Now, sometimes that's a good thing, right? And specifically and particularly if it's going to cost a lot of money. But it can be a not so good thing if we're trying to resolve something and keep someone's privacy, protected. And I don't mean an employee's, I mean somebody else's privacy protected. Or we're trying to get something done quickly. So, we need at least the 48 weekday hours, and there's nothing wrong with saying we want to approve anything that's not already appropriated for settlements. But there is kind of a day-to-day operational level of things that maybe the council doesn't want to get involved with. And so by saying a particular dollar amount, it means that the council's involved whenever it gets above that dollar amount. So whatever that dollar amount might be. One place to look might be in the budget itself and see if there's any appropriation line for settlements.
Yeah, I know personally, if I found out that the town manager approved anything more than, say, $10,000, this is a citizen of the town, I would probably be kind of upset, I think, that I didn't know about it.
Yep, so that's a kind of discussion then that, you know, you guys can feel what feels right to you. If that would make you upset, then you're talking about a $10,000 range. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, just my opinion. If it was 50, I think I would be very upset, personally.
Does anybody else have a opinion on this? Anybody familiar enough with the budget to know if we've got a line item for settlements?
This is Dave. I would need to see some more context to understand what these things realistically look like.
And I think
hard to tell in a vacuum.
Yeah, and I think every situation is going to be different, so I think that's going to complicate matters as well. You know, are we talking about wrongful termination? Are we talking about compensation for injury on town property? Because I think those are, I think depending on, you know, is it to settle a sexual harassment claim?
So
yeah, I think these all get, depending upon what we're looking at, maybe our opinion changes.
And that certainly is understandable. I think you need to bear in mind that the council is the legislative body. So they're making laws and appropriating money. And so if the manager, let's just say hypothetically, negotiates an agreement with an employee for whatever it is, $13,000 or $17,000, and there's no line for it, well, there need to be a process followed, meaning no appropriation for it, there need to be a process followed. If there's a settlement account, and let's just say there's $50,000 in it, and the manager is allowed to settle, you know, litigation up to $7,500 or $10,000 or whatever, you're going to be weeding out then some of that risk that comes with a larger group, knowing, you know, things that are personnel related, especially where, you know, the manager is the supervisor of those individuals. So again, I understand the pull, the back and forth. Should it be the council? Should it be the manager? But I do think there is a number under which it would be reasonable for the manager to settle something. And in my experience, there typically is some level at which it's appropriate. So I think, you know, again, I think this is another one of those kind of points that does take a little bit of research and consideration. You know, is there money in the budget right now for settlements? And before the Board of Selectmen has to go to the town meeting to settle something, and how does that work?
Okay. Can I get a volunteer to investigate that for us?
I can ask Mike if you want.
That would be great, Keith. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's table this for now. I did have a question. Have we seen these in this clause in other charters? I'm kind of surprised we haven't had this discussion yet. Is this a new?
Yeah, this is something that we talked about in North Attleboro, and that's why it wound up here. Prosecute, defend, and compromise litigation. Typically, that is language that's given to the Board of Selectmen as the chief executive or the town manager. So, you know, that's why it's there.
Okay. Okay. Out of curiosity, what's the dollar amount North Attleboro used?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I can look it up, but
I have it actually. Give me a second. I had their charter. I do have their charter up. So it's in, what section are we in? 4?
Yep, 4-2 maybe.
I'm not seeing a dollar amount anywhere in here.
Could have been a discussion and maybe not enough proof. Hold on, let's just see.
Okay.
I'm gonna look for compromise litigation. Let's see if we can find that.
Yeah, it's definitely not in 4-2, which is duties.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in there. You know what? I don't know if it's in there. I don't know. I'll have to retrace.
Okay, all right. I feel better now about not having
Thought about it.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, let's move on. One second to jump back. Okay, sorry. Okay, we have not gotten this far yet. So this is 4-3 under powers of appointment. For the town manager. And the way it is currently written is multiple member bodies can be appointed by the town manager, and it doesn't say they have to be registered voters, just residents of the town.
Well, appointed by the manager, Lauren, I just want to point out, appointed by the manager subject to the council's disapproval.
Right.
So everything in everything in A is subject to the council's disapproval, and B is independent without council approval. And with respect to multiple member bodies, there's basically a law that says people don't need to be residents or registered voters unless there's something that says they do for appointed positions. So that's why I'm just raising that for you to think about it. It's not right or wrong in any capacity. The difference is, like in some communities, registered voters those are the people that are there year round and that live in town for purposes of voting. Others, there are places where people might live in town but not be registered there, so they're there for some part of the year or there for some part of the week or whatever. So not all, or they're not United States citizens, so they can't register to vote. So this is residents, not registered voters, the way that it's written.
Okay. And I seem to recall, and I think it was the Parks and Recs Commission, Sharon making a comment that it had to do with alternates, but her rationale was that she had some snowbirds. So I am disinclined to exclude them just because they are not registered to vote here, even, as long as they're at least living here part of the time and are willing to volunteer their time. But I'm willing to listen to other opinions of the board.
Yeah, I'm fine with the residents of the town. I just had a question, Lauren. Does that mean there's no age limit?
Yeah, there really isn't.
All right.
So, and again, I think this is one of those things that doesn't turn out to be a problem generally. But yes, in theory, somebody could seek to be appointed who is not 18.
Right. Yeah, which may not be a bad thing.
Right. Yep.
No, if there was a Eagle Scout or a high school student who wanted to do their service work and sit on the Council on Aging to do so, I'm in favor of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody's in agreement here?
Yes.
Okay. The addition of language within C, powers of appointment, adding the language, town manager shall consult with residents, department heads, and others concerning recruitment, evaluation, and selection of individuals for appointment, and shall strive to make appointments that are inclusive of the diversity of the population of the town. I am very much in favor of this section being added.
Yes.
Good.
Anybody feel differently?
No.
Excellent. Section 4-4, powers of suspension or removal. The town manager shall have the authority to suspend or remove persons appointed section 4-3 for cause. And Lauren had some comment.
Yeah. I was just trying to point out that for cause is one standard, for good cause is another standard. Typically, we would argue that it be just at for cause, because otherwise you can wind up spending a lot of time litigating the question of whether something is good cause or if it's just cause. So we would just suggest saying for cause, but I wanted to at least point out that that was a difference.
Okay.
I'm inclined to accept council's recommendation. Everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There's no issue. I'm going to move on. Section 5. Administrative. I don't think we have anything in here. Very short and sweet. I like it. We'll keep it. Section 6, financial management. I don't remember seeing too much in here either. I think this well captured what we had discussed. No issues from Lauren. That was section 6. Yeah, okay. Moving on to section 7, citizen participation mechanisms. Okay, I'm gonna get used to that one. And Lauren, under referendum, that should be 7-4 as opposed to 8-4.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Just for the sake of confusion when we get to 8-4.
Do we skip section 7.4? 7.5.
7.5. No, it's coming up next. This says 8-4. It should say 7.4. 7.5 is coming next.
Oh, sorry.
So Carrie is saying, I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you don't mind, I just actually wanted to back up real quick. Under 7.3, I had a quick question, and maybe it's just not an issue at all. The initiative petition, it says it'll be filed with the clerk of town council. And then in the next paragraph talks about it within 10 days of filling, the board of registrars self-certify. Do we have to specify as to how it gets from town council to the board of registrars? And
I don't think so. We
Okay.
can if we want to, but I don't think so, no.
okay, I didn't know if we needed to put a timeline or a stipulation in there. That's fine.
I think basically the reality is, and maybe clerk of the council or town clerk, the reality is that only the board of registrars town clerk had the ability to certify this. So the clerk of the council, maybe we should just say that the town clerk was there.
Okay, that's kind of what I was initially getting at, but
Okay.
I figured there was a reason you had used clerk of the town council as opposed to.
Good point. Thank you.
Okay. Nope, that's fine. One thing I did want to point out in C, this section here, if at the expiration of the said 30 days, town council is not voted, it says such inaction shall be deemed a rejection. That is actually not what we had decided. We had
Okay.
determined that no business shall be conducted by the town council until it's addressed.
Okay.
We felt that folks having to go through the process of getting that to that point should be heard.
So the council shall take action on no other business until such measure has been addressed.
Yes, please.
Okay. Got it.
Within D,
Uh-huh.
second sentence, initiative shall be signed by a number of additional voters. We had agreed that we would include the original petitioners. They just had to sign the new supplemental petition.
Of additional voters shall be signed by. So a number of voters equal
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And it could include the ones that had already signed.
to. Yeah, I think if we're just saying, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Within what was 8.4, which is now 7.4B, the second sentence, section 7-3, G actually should not apply here because we've addressed it in the final paragraph of 7-4.
Okay. We've addressed it in the final paragraph. So, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be confused, but so
That's okay.
time of taking effect. So that would be for the initiative.
Yes.
So if we go back up to G, it says if at least 15% of the total number of voters participate and a majority says yes, then that takes effect.
Correct. But we decided 20% for referendum.
Oh, okay. But 15% for initiative?
Yes. So if you refer to after C form of question, there's that last paragraph, which I think should probably be D and say time of taking effect.
Okay.
Because we do have a different requirement between initiative and referendum.
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. Okay. Noting that Carrie has specified within referendum that she would still like to see this at 10%. I feel I need to raise it on her behalf because she has put it in writing and asked me to. My position on a lot of this is we've discussed this quite sufficiently and came to a decision, but I am willing to open this back up if somebody else would like to as well. Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we're going to move on. And David, you had something you wanted to discuss within 7.5?
Actually, it was just Lauren's comment. I thought we had skipped it.
Oh, I see. Got it.
I think in this regard, I think the thought had been to make it, I know it's kind of redundant when you say capital improvements project, that's part of the budget. But I thought in general we felt it was more descriptive and for a layperson who may not be all that familiar, with the town budget versus capital improvements budget, it was clear as spell. So it was,
I know we had, sorry, go ahead.
We had in our minutes, I had the minutes from last week that we agreed to put leave the capital improvements budget program in there.
Oh, look at that. There we go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Sandy. Can I ask a question? Sandy, I thought we had decided that, or and maybe it's a question for Lauren. I thought in our last discussion, revenue loan orders was coming out.
Revenue loan orders were different than authorizing a borrowing. So
Right.
revenue loan orders is the action of the council to approve, to actually issue bonds. So, you know, it says at town meeting, treasurer with the approval of the board of selectmen may issue bond. That's what this revenue loan order says. So it should not be subject to a referendum. If, on the other hand, there's a separate item, let's say that the council wants to refurbish a school and borrow, you know, $20 million or something, that is not a revenue loan order. That's a vote to authorize borrowing, and that would be subject to referendum.
Okay.
But the actual issuance of the debt, the council signing off on that, when it's been approved by, you know, once it's been approved, that would not be subject to a referendum.
Okay. For some reason in my head, I remembered you saying, oh, it's not applicable anymore. For some reason. But,
That was, I think that was something else. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought most of the towns didn't use that term. I thought it was only Amherst that used that term.
Revenue loan order?
Yeah.
I know it's in Amesbury. I know it's in a lot of them.
Hang on 1 second. I'll tell you which. Revenue loan orders was the one actually most often used. Yep. It was everywhere except in Amherst.
Oh, I had back to that. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Are these carries? These are carries. Okay. Anybody? So no further issues here. I don't remember seeing the non-binding public opinion advisory question, but I like it.
Well, this is something, I don't know if I hadn't brought this up before or not. Under state law, the council would have the ability to put on a non-binding public opinion advisory question at the annual town election. But here, the reality is, or the provision is for a rejection, any measure or non-binding public opinion advisory. So this goes beyond that, and it basically says the town council can put before the voters a proposed law, just like any voter could try and do separately, so through the petition process. So it's giving the council access to the ballot to propose legislation. So let's say there was a huge debate over whether to implement whatever tax, you could put that to the voters, do you favor blah, blah, blah.
Can you guys still hear me? It all of a sudden just went really quiet again, and
We can hear you.
okay, good. Nobody said anything.
I think we're all just getting tired.
It is. It's getting late, and we're at the end of section 7, article 7. I'm happy to press on if people want to. If people are less inclined to, I'll take a motion to, let's talk about next meeting, I guess, first. Let's just do a quick poll. Are people inclined to stop here? Have we done that good work?
Yeah, I'm going to need to hop off just because I have to get some more work done
That's fine.
this evening. Yeah, sorry.
I think we did good work here. I'm very happy with how far we've gotten. Lauren, I forgot. Are you available on our next meeting, June 29th?
June 29th. I have a meeting that evening. A town meeting that I can't reorganize.
Okay.
So I'm just looking here. The 24th, I don't have anything. The 25th, I don't have anything. The 30th, I might, so I can't say for sure if a town meeting continues. Then I wouldn't be able to. But the 24th, the 25th are days that work, or I could do, and I know everybody has work, and but I could do like a morning, you know, even an early morning before most people are at work. I could do anytime you guys wanted, including the 29th.
Okay. The 20.
I also, just for this week too, on Thursday, I don't have anything, so I could do Thursday night.
Okay. I can't do that, and I can't do the 24th. How do people feel about you said you can't make the 30th, Lauren?
I might be able to if the town meeting that I'm going to the night before ends.
Okay. What about July 1st?
I can definitely do July 1st.
Okay. So we have the 25th of June or the 1st of July. Does one of those work better for most of us?
Madam Chair, I got one more comment.
Sure.
I can also do the weekends. I know that, that may not be convenient, but I certainly can if it's convenient for you. So you can just let me know. Typically, let's see, on the 20th I could do, which is a Saturday, I could do after about 4, and on the 21st I have, well, that's Father's Day. I also could do the 28th, I have nothing that day.
I don't know what the
28th is a Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know what the folks' opinion of doing a weekend are.
I can do either the 25th or July 1st.
I mean, I guess I'm open to any day. I mean, we're almost through, so I don't think it's going to be a long meeting.
No.
I'm on my second cup of coffee, but so I'll just keep going. But anyway, doesn't really matter to me. Whatever.
All right, let's make it.
I can do either of those dates as well.
Okay. Denise, can you make the 25th?
Yeah, I can do the 25th or the 1st, doesn't matter.
Okay. Keith, how about you?
I should be able to.
Okay. Kevin had to drop off. Dave Heaney, how about you on the 25th?
Yep.
Okay. Let's go with June 25th. I'll have to make a note of that and get an agenda in earlier. That's going to throw me all off.
So Laura, does that mean the 25th and the 29th still, or?
No, 29th. I'm inclined to skip the 29th.
Okay.
Unless people see a need. I'm not sure I do. And then Lauren, our next meeting would be the 13th of July.
Okay, let me just double check. Nope, I'm fine on the 13th of July.
All right, pencil us in, please.
Yes, here you are.
Okay. All right, let's go with our next meeting on June 25th at 7 p.m. I will send around an agenda, and this is in lieu of our meeting on June 29th.
Can I ask a question about, Janie had brought up something about conservation earlier. I was hoping she could jog my memory as to the conversation that we had, just so I could
think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good idea.
So, hi, thank you. So yeah, we had a conversation about, it was around March, early March, a conversation about forming the DPW and whether or not the Conservation Commission, even though it currently is a separate entity, would fall under the umbrella of the DPW. We had some questions and some concerns about that in terms of licensings and state laws and regulations and things of that nature. So we kind of put it off and we held it for questions for Lauren when we met. And we met with her on the 23rd of March and asked her all of the questions that we had. For example, the state laws, would they be impacted? To move the commission under the umbrella. And, her answer, and she can weigh in now if she wants, I'm not sure if she's still here, but was that no, it wouldn't impact any state laws. State laws would still be in effect. There would be no change to that. The big difference would be just the umbrella of power, responsibility, and who the Conservation Commission answers to, as opposed to the town manager. It would fall under the DPW, the superintendent.
If I could just weigh in here also, Kevin Schleicher had to leave us, and I said, is there anything you needed to raise? He had a similar, I'm just going to read his comment real quick, just to put it in the record for him. The only comment I had, this sounds like it's very similar, only comment I had was the conservation being under the DPW, especially if the DPW is looking to hire an engineer at some point, especially with specialty in storm, water, and hydrology. Seems it would be in the best interest for an engineer and the DPW to run the conservation instead of the town manager for day-to-day stuff.
So just to clarify, are we talking about the Conservation Commission being, are you suggesting that they're absorbed by the town council, or are you saying the conservation agent would answer to the DPW director? I'm not sure what the
latter.
Okay, so it's not the commission itself; it's the agent that we're looking at.
Correct.
Okay, and where do we define who answers to who in terms of that DPW director? Because I know we talked about the different boards and committees, but I felt like we left that part of it.
If you look at section 2-11.
Yeah, sorry, Janie. I thought it was coming up later in the charter, and sorry, it was back in section 2, and we probably should have addressed it there. My apologies.
That's okay. No issue.
So, I guess my confusion is that talks about the town council, how the town council acting as a different committees, right? As is now taking over the water commissioners and sewer commissioners. I don't understand where it says in there which directors answer to who.
Well, I think in my understanding in our conversations about that, we talked about the council taking over, not day-to-day affairs, but limiting that to setting rates. Was the one thing that stands out to me in terms of them setting rates. And I think there was a question of, if there were, and I'm off the top of my head because I don't have those exact notes in front of me, that the commission would be the final rate setter. The council, would be the final rate setter with the guidance of the commission. And there was another issue raised in terms of, like with the water, if there were a question or a dispute about a bill, you would go, to the actual commission, and then if there was a second dispute, then you would go to the town councilors. So that was my understanding.
That sounds familiar.
That was my understanding in terms of what the town council was. The town council is not going to be in the day-to-day operations because they don't have those skills, nor should we expect them to, but they were going to be the final rate setters.
So I follow all that, but I guess I'm not following where Conservation Commission comes into that, or what we're looking at changing in terms of like what wording in the charter are we contemplating changing or adding something to?
In Norton's current charter?
No, in the charter, the draft. Because the only place I see the DPW mentioned is in 211, which is talking about what you were just saying, that the town council is going to act as the water sewer commissioners and setting rates and hearing appeals after they've been heard by the DPW director. But we don't say anything in there like that.
I think the wording was the exception of, with the library trustees and the, what's the other one I'm looking for?
Is the school.
So you're talking about, you're talking about the property then?
To exclusions.
But that was talking about properties, right? That's where those were excluded. We're talking about properties and who, in terms of the town manager and how the town manager is in charge of all properties except for those by the library. I remember that conversation at length.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember the conservation come up in relation to the management of the properties. I don't remember it as falling under DPW as a whole.
Well, I think that was part of our discussion. Should it? It wasn't. It was excluded, and the question that we discussed was why was it excluded?
So if can I just break in for just 1 second? That's okay. Now that I've broken in for 1 second. So I think the issue is under G. It says that the town manager has full jurisdiction over rental and use of all facilities and property except, and then it's property under the school committee, because essentially property under the school committee is managed by the school committee. Property under the board of library directors, essentially the library, which is managed by the library, and property under the control of the Conservation Commission, which basically has various or varying responsibilities with respect to maintenance of property. So it's not, in my opinion, unusual for the town and the Conservation Commission. Essentially, the Conservation Commission uses the town's materials and labor and all of that, and kind of directs how that kind of property maintenance is going to be done. So, on the other hand, in terms of use of property, the Conservation Commission is probably, the town manager couldn't say, for example, to the Conservation Commission, no, even though this property is held for Article 97 purposes, we're going to use it to build a gymnasium. That would have to be something that the legislative body became involved with and the general court. So.
Can I ask a question? The Conservation Commission, and I'm going to have to go, I can refer back to our earlier DPW discussion, and I think I had drafted up a quick cheat sheet, but Lauren may know this off the top of her head. Is conservation typically a division within the DPW?
No. Not in my experience.
I didn't think so. I know they handle, in some cases, wastewater, and the prevention of the pollution of that into wetlands and bodies of water. But I couldn't recall conservation specifically being a division. So conservation, if I'm not mistaken, that's mandated by state law?
Yeah, and the Conservation Commission basically manages property that was acquired for conservation purposes, so anything acquired under Article 97. They also act under the Wetlands Protection Act and any local wetlands protection bylaw with respect to essentially determining whether either of those things apply to a proposed project. And then if they do apply, then, they can require mitigation, they can require workarounds, etc. And yes, some of them deal with stormwater as well.
Okay. So do we have, is there a good reason, engineering being one of them, where there would be shared services? Can we put conservation within the DPW?
Yeah, I think you can. And what I think maybe what Janie's referring to is one of the things that I had said is that the obligations of the Conservation Commission will not change if the Conservation Commission is essentially part of the Department of Public Works. It will still be a Conservation Commission. It will still have the jobs that it has. In terms of internal responsibility, we didn't talk in the charter, and if we go back, let me just go back to the other section that we were talking about. So back up in 211, the council shall have the powers and duties vested by general or special in road, survey of highway, superintendent of streets, water commissioner, sewer commissioner, cemetery, tree warden, moth superintendent, and forestry, and anything also as may be determined by the council. So, for example, the Conservation Commission and the council could agree that conservation will be in Department of Public Works. It doesn't talk here about whether there's going to be a water division, a cemetery division, a sewer division. It doesn't talk about who's going to be in charge of the different divisions. This would be something that typically happens from a functional standpoint unless we write it into the charter. So, again, I think it does allow for additional departments essentially to be the responsibility of DPW, but that goes, again, because they have so much responsibility under the Wetlands Protection Act and wetlands bylaws, that typically is not a part of that department. Doesn't mean it can't be located there. Doesn't mean that resources can't be coordinated. And maybe that's something that would be useful to put in here somewhere that says, regardless of the department, that the part of the town manager's job is to encourage, the use of shared resources, human and otherwise. But I do think I should take a look and see if there's any other places where conservation is in the DPW, or someone else can if they would like. I don't need to be the researcher unless you want me to.
If you give me a second, I know we did do a quick survey to see. I'm going to stop sharing and hang on. Before I stop sharing, let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. I just forget what I called it.
Divisions within?
Yeah, no, I think it was just like something like DPW analyses or something like that. Ah, I got it. Okay, hang on. All right, bear with me. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this one. I want to find... Okay. I think this is it. Can everybody sees this, right?
Yeah, this looks like referendum and initiative, though.
No. Okay, sorry. Hang on. Stop. This is weird. Let me kill that. Save. I think I just have too many things open at this point. Alright. Sorry, I don't mean to keep people longer, but there it is. I found it. Okay. So back when we talked about DPWs in particular, we went through through all of these charters here and kind of did an assessment of what divisions are typically found there. So we've got highways, roads, sidewalks, they all call things a little bit differently. Water, sewer, something called structures and grounds could be identified as cemeteries or parks and fields. There's solid waste, recycling, transfer station, engineering and technical support, wastewater treatment, which includes pollution control, wetlands and water, stormwater management, tree and warden, and then Franklin had administration, accounting, planning, regulatory, compliance, and community. They had an odd one here. So we kind of went through to see under which towns, what divisions they had incorporated in their DPW, and I don't.
So there is that reference to wetlands, but I do think it's going to be through the wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
But we could certainly go back and look at those charters and just see if it said anything about conservation. I mean, basically a charter is something that you all can, it will supersede state law with respect to functionality. So if you wanted to put the Conservation Commission, quote unquote, in the department, you could. It just wouldn't change the fact that the Conservation Commission would have to be acting under statutory and regulatory authority.
As opposed to the town manager.
As opposed, yeah, exactly.
I think Kevin was stating that he'd like to get rid of the conservation agent and get an engineer with a degree to take her place. That's what I'm getting from him.
The agent.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. And that is another thing. So you see where it says like engineering, technical support. There's no language in here about who should be the conservation agent and
right.
or who would be any of these division heads. So, I mean, we could specify that if that's something that people are interested in.
Okay. Yeah, there's a second tab in here where I remember we were talking about whether they had a DPW, who was the department head, whether they had advisory boards and commissions, whether or not they had an engineer on staff. Actually, Bridgewater here is an engineer and that also acts as a conservation agent. So it looks like Bridgewater does.
I think either way we're going to have to hold this for a separate meeting because we're forging new ground here and we're missing a lot of people.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, but Janie, this is what you were getting at?
Yes, thank you. And
Okay.
I take the few screenshots here, and we can certainly. I didn't mean to keep everybody.
Nope, that's okay.
I too am hitting my wall.
Yeah. All right. So let's plan on meeting again June 25th at 7 p.m. We will continue the review of the charter. Everybody has a few tasks, action items. I'm going to go to Lucia. Keith is going to go to Mike Units to talk about the settlement and what an appropriate dollar amount seems to be. Lauren's going to look into what other towns may have the conservation agent fall within the DPW. We can bring that up at the next meeting. Did I miss any other action items?
No, I think we decided, Laura, maybe we didn't have to talk to Lucia.
Oh, you're right. We didn't. Okay, excellent.
What was that? I'm sorry.
We decided we were not going to talk to Lucia about.
Oh, right.
Yep. So, okay. That makes up for the time I blew by it the first time. So,
All right.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss? All right. I will take a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll motion to adjourn. I'll second.
David Ren adjourned, Denise the second. Janie,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Dave Heaney,
Yep.
Janie,
Yes.
Sandy. I already called Janie, didn't I?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We definitely
It's
want
late.
to go.
Is that everybody? I'm a yes too. We're adjourned.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.